started when I got here, basically. When I moved in. Well, this is the first home that I've ever bought, so it was the first time that my name is on the title of the property. And it started even before the carpets got ripped out and the place was still in its old state, which was basically very run down and it needed a lot of work, and I had planned to renovate it. So it basically started then, and I think the first thing that happened was I was in bed one night in the front room there, and somebody sat on the end of my bed. I mean, it's a bit hard to be mistaken about that when you're still wide awake, you know. But there was a definite depression at the end of my bed, as if someone was sitting on it. First I thought it was the cat, but it wasn't. And I don't know, for some reason I just, for a lot of the earlier things that happened, I just sort of pushed it to the back of my head. I just thought, oh, it's just whatever's in the air, you know. It's just energy, it's electricity, I've still got the TV aerial on the roof, you know, I hadn't taken it off yet. And that was generally my belief for most of the first part of it, because of what I'd studied and learned about technology and mobile technology and the impact that it's having on our biosphere and our immediate experience with reality, insiders and outsiders. I mean, it's all-consuming technology. So that's basically where I placed it at the start, was there. And that continued right up until more recently, and I've been here for 2 years now. So the first thing was that, sitting on the end of my bed. Naturally, you move into a new place, there are noises and things that you're not familiar with, so you shrug it off as possums or whatever, and until it gets to a point where they're not just sounds of the house creaking and there are no possums because there's no trees near your house, and you think, well, maybe it's birds, or but then the internal sounds were quite noticeable. At one point it reached the point of, maybe in the kitchen actually, and a couple of times in the lounge room, I'd go to bed and it would sound like there was somebody banging on Tupperware containers in the kitchen. More recently there were 3 quite loud knocks on the wall in the hallway. Yeah, so the noises and stuff have also been there as well, but it's something that builds up slowly, mainly because I'm not really taking notice of it. So it's constantly been there. After that, I think the next major thing that happened was I had a phone conversation with a government department about a side issue, and they were so obnoxious and on the phone, sort of the infantilizer mindset. At one point I actually had to ask the person, are you a doctor? Because they were asking medical questions and then having to fill out answers on little forms, you know, tick boxes on their forms. And I thought, what if that person is not a doctor and doesn't understand how to interpret my answer as a doctor would, and they check the wrong boxes and stuff. Just little frustrations that everyday people deal with when they have to deal with a government department. But on this particular occasion, the woman on the other end of the phone was so obnoxious, and when I asked her if she was a doctor, she became really offended, as though our jobs were reversed and I'm there to please her and nurture her feelings when she's supposed to be a professional and do her job. So if I ask her a question, she's simply supposed to answer it. But she got offended. She was like, "What do you mean, am I a doctor? Well, why do you say that? Well, you're questioning my ability." It's like, there's this mentality going around that people who are being paid also have the right to make demands in a basic customer service setting, which is just ridiculous, and I wasn't rude to her at all. So anyway, that happened. And it got under my skin, probably because things in other ways had built up for me to that point. So I was particularly sensitive to any type of obnoxious irritation. And I went into my bedroom, I had a shower or something like that, and went into my bedroom and got dressed and everything. And then I remember thinking to myself sort of quite loudly, okay, I'll get my mind off it. I've still got to put stuff in the cupboard near the front door, And as I did that, I think I sort of gestured or whatever, and I got up and came out, and the closet door was wide open. And yet there was no wind. It's quite a heavy door. I tried physically opening it myself by flicking it, and it simply wouldn't travel that far. No matter how far I did it, it simply wouldn't travel that far from a closed position, and it's on one of those little snib things. So it actually has to be pulled out of the snib and moved to that spot. And I think I actually captured that on video at the time. Just so I had documentation of it. I might have actually deleted it. Oh well. Anyway. So that was the next thing that happened. So already I've got, somebody sitting on the end of my bed, strange noises in the kitchen specifically, and the closet door opening. And then for a while, nothing. Until more recently. So I'd finished the renovation. I had a real estate agent who screwed it up. They sent a buyer away, a buyer that was interested with the right amount of money, and they wouldn't even offer the person an inspection, and sent them somewhere else because they didn't think that they'd like this one. It's never ending. It's never ending. The state of society is a disgrace. It's never ending. So of course that was really deflating for me, and I had words with them about it. I requested a conversation with the director of the company. He delayed getting back to me for 5 whole months until I finally said, well, I'm going to have to take some type of action to get some compensation because you violated the exclusive sale authority. You're supposed to work for me, not the buyer. And now I have to relist my house with somebody else, and that's going to cost me extra. They didn't want a bar of it. And then people just can't even take responsibility for the smallest thing these days. It's frightening. It's actually terrifying to go out into society and feel like you're in that your experience with reality and everything that you knew to be normal and sane and reasonable for most of your life is now on its head, turned upside down, with the people that we deal with. It's like looking out at monsters, ghouls and zombies who make no sense, have no respect, and are completely unaccountable for anything they do. It's hideous. It's absolutely hideous. So these were sort of the mounting pressures. And then being stuck, and then they put interest rates up, which clamped down on buyers' ability to buy, and all this. And at the same time, we had a whole a whole genre of, you know, like new home buyers who are so spoiled rotten these days that they want everything new in their first home. And unless you can afford it, the reality is if you can't afford it, you're not going to get it. If you can't afford it, you're supposed to buy cheaper, older homes, do them up a little bit, maybe renovate your kitchen over time, and then you sell it. And eventually you can move into your dream home when you've paid off enough of your mortgage or whatever. I mean, that's pretty much the way it has always been. But the yuppie set, the spoiled brat entitled set, the smartphone set, the Facebook set, want instant access to the best of everything straight away because they're entitled little brats who think they should be spoon-fed. Everything that other people worked hard for all their lives, like my mother did. I mean, I have already lost a significant amount of money because of people who don't respect hard work, people who don't respect my mother, people who don't respect money, people who don't even care about me or my family. People who feel entitled to do whatever they like with our time and energy. And so what I do have left, I'm preserving. And I'm not going to have the government or yuppie new home buyers come in and start making ridiculous low offers. Some of them are offering 100k less to other people. And they're insulting. They may as well just go and buy a unit and get acquainted with reality. Beside the point, but these are the frustrations to do with the government system that are building up in me, in my home, as time wears on, right? And at the same time, in parallel to that, there's these little weird things that are happening in my house. Weird little things. Just weird little things that I sort of push off to one side because I think, well, you know, the tradies were here with their phones and it's probably just a bit of electricity, you know, pockets of heat and stuff, and sometimes you can get snaps and crackles and pops and whatever, right? But a closet door opening, I even thought, well, you know, I didn't open it, but maybe there was some miraculous source of wind that was able to blow it open from the inside and leave it open. So I sort of brushed that off as well. And then more recently, of course, with the situation with the house, the environment in dealing with the government on other issues, and the situation with my family, it built up, I guess. It built up, and connections were made to my home through the introduction of new people into our lives. One of whom volunteers for the Victorian government in some capacity of charity work or something. So when I look at things like that, I start to see a pattern of government intrusion, whether it's through people's phones when they come into your house, or through the people that are brought into my life. And it's not a kind force, it's not a gentle force, it's not an understanding force. It's a very heavy-booted force. It's very colonial, it's very elitist, it's very narcissistic, entitled and vain, as if these people are no longer public servants and are lords and masters over other people. I mean, that's where we're at. That's how I interpret things. So it naturally generates in me a certain type of fury, a certain specific flavour of fury and anger, as well as the situation with my family, an incredible anguish and emotional torment that I have never experienced before. So, you know, the occurrences around it here started to increase. And the next minute I got a spam text message. They should be illegal. And they really are just indicative of ridiculous human mindsets that believe they're entitled to invade other people's mind space and homes through these phones. It's sickening. It's evil and it's ignorant and it's sickening. I got a text message, didn't recognise the phone number, but inside the text message was an attachment that said, you know, just click on this, blah, blah, blah. Well, my phone is not a smartphone. It doesn't have data. I don't click on attachments. I delete spam straight away. So that's exactly what I did. I placed my phone on the table out there, on the kitchen bench, sorry. And went into the bathroom. And I heard crackling noises in the kitchen, a distinct crackling. A bit like chips being crunched underfoot or something. And I actually thought that it was my cat. I thought that he was eating his dry food. And that's where I placed it in my mind. It was peripheral. I heard it. I thought got the impression that he had come into the kitchen and started eating his food. So when I came out, I discovered that he wasn't in the kitchen at all. He was sound asleep in the lounge, actually, right here. He was sound asleep. So that was the next thing that I noticed. And then probably a few days after that, I went into the bathroom and the whole thing was full of steam and condensation. All the mirror was covered in steam as if somebody had just had a shower. All the outside of the shower glass was all wet, dripping down it. It was honestly like somebody had a shower in my bathroom. And this happened 2 or 3 times. You know, over a period of time, I'd go in there and something's causing a radical temperature change in my bathroom to produce condensation and steam and the fogging up of my bathroom mirror. And I thought, this is ridiculous. This is like, you know, horror paranormal films where they got the steamy bathroom mirror and they're going to write boo in it, you know. And I just thought, okay, well, I'm still going to put this down to technology based, because sometimes electrical forces, radiation, it can produce too much heat, it can suck the heat out of a room. But I had nobody in there with a phone. I don't know why the bathroom specifically. And it just became more disturbing at that point. And then I think the next thing that happened was sounds in the lounge room that became louder. A family member had come down for Christmas and stayed in the second bedroom with their phone. After they left, I was out here in the lounge room one night and it was during the day and it was late afternoon, and I heard a tremendous thud in that room. You know how you eventually know your house and you know where the sound's coming from. And I heard a tremendous thud on the floor in that room. So I bolted up, because I have no fear with it. I bolted up from my seat, went in there, opened the door, and the window opposite immediately banged and shuddered. It was visibly shaking in its frame. And what I had noticed is that I had actually placed a quilt. I'd tidied up where he'd stayed, and I'd placed the quilt on the floor while I was still taking stuff out to the laundry. So there's a quilt on the floor, and there was a depression in it. And when I opened the door, this quilt jumped up off the ground. Okay? Now, even if I had opened that door really forcefully, there's no scientific explanation for the levitation of an object or the violent shuttering of a window that can be explained by any type of build-up of a vacuum at all. Do you get what I mean? So there's a vacuum, you open the door and suddenly everything pops. That wasn't the case. That's a normal bedroom. The door had simply been shut, and I've simply opened it. And this is, you know, I opened it quite quickly, but not enough to cause what it was that I observed. And this was in the midst of me going through an absolutely terrible time. Because of these family issues. I had stumbled around here in an emotionally traumatized coma almost for about 2 weeks. And at one point I was so traumatized emotionally and in such emotional pain that when I woke up in the morning in my bed, my body was actually convulsing. Because pressure builds up. And when outsiders to your family start to try to run you over, make their own claims, have their own entitlements, and cause deeply distressing events through their ignorance, in a situation where your family is basically 2 people, and without each other you're kind of alone, aside from a few friends. It's a lot. We've been through a lot, and too much to go into here, but that was what I was looking at, was an environment of deep trauma in this house. However, the occurrences started way before that. They started when I got here. So whatever was going on with this house seemed to be feeding off increasing levels of stress and distress in me, so as to produce phenomena in the home that I couldn't immediately explain or explained away with a technological explanation, a scientific explanation, which I'm still quite happy to go with, except for more recent events which became disturbing, very disturbing. The lights flashing on and off, and not in a way that's signalled that there was some type of power issue with the power. Normally in a windstorm or something like that, you might get a light flicker, but the interesting thing is my lamps are actually connected to power boards, and if there's something that's going wrong with the electricity coming to the power board, they have a safety switch and everything on that board is supposed to turn off. But whatever this was isolating the lamps and caused this one to flicker. I put that down to maybe an electrical fault. It hasn't happened since. There's nothing wrong with the lamp, there's nothing wrong with the power board, and there's nothing wrong with the power. The other time it happened was with the bigger lamp, and it appeared to be communicating in some way, in a response type system. It turned on and off, not at the switch, but the lamp itself turned on and off once on one occasion, and then on another occasion it turned on and off twice, as if it was being intelligently controlled. And yet I don't have any smart tech in this house. There is no smart tech. None. My internet connection runs to a modem. Fibre optics. But there's no smart tech, as in there's no mobile signal, there's no radio. So, and the same thing with that lamp is that there's a power board, and my modem is attached to that power board, the same one as the lamp, but the modem was not affected by what the lamp was doing. And there's no problem with the lamp because it's completely fine. There's no problem with the globe either. And then sort of around July, the end of July, I went to bed quite late one night, and you know how you can tell you've only been asleep for, like you haven't even really gotten to sleep? You're sort of lying there and you haven't really gotten to sleep. Well, I was lying there with my cat, who was sort of next to me on my left. And, you know, I've got the covers pulled up and everything, and my cat's there. And I was just sort of dozing off, and I think I had just gotten to sleep. So my brainwaves had just entered the sleep state. And I was suddenly woken up. By what, I couldn't tell you. There was nothing that prompted me to wake up. There was no noise that made me wake up, you know what I'm saying? There was nothing external that caused me to wake up. And under normal circumstances, I simply wouldn't do that. I'd just go to sleep. But I woke up with a start. And I looked down, and I'm still in exactly the same position as when I pulled my covers up. I looked down and my covers had been peeled back to my waist. My bed covers physically peeled back to my waist, and the room was freezing. Okay? I quickly pulled them back up again to get warm. In that sort of a mode, I started to become angry because I felt that the intrusion of it was outrageous. And as I cuddled back into my cat, who was still asleep, and went back to sleep, part of my hand was exposed, and I felt something claw my left forefinger, like little metallic, very, very tiny little metallic claws, almost like a marmoset, you know, all those little Indian monkeys or whatever they're called, and they have these little tiny claws. That's what it felt like, this little clawing of my finger. And that finger hurt quite noticeably, was tender to touch for all of the next day.